While you're focused on gold and cryptocurrencies, the United States government is executing one of the largest precious metal acquisitions in recent history, and nobody's talking about it. Silver, billions of dollars worth, hidden in plain sight. The question isn't just what they're buying, it's why now, and what it means for your wealth. Stay with me because the silent ledger is about to reveal a story that could reshape how you think about inflation, national security, and your financial future. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you heard a mainstream news anchor mention silver stockpiles? Probably never, right? That's exactly the point. Governments don't announce major resource acquisitions the way companies launch products. They do it quietly, methodically, almost invisibly. But if you know where to look, the evidence is undeniable. Over the past 18 months, federal agencies have been acquiring silver at a pace not seen since the Cold War era. We're talking about millions of ounces, delivered to secure facilities, tracked through supply chain data that most people never bother to examine. Before I explain why this matters to you, please hit that like button and subscribe to The Silent Ledger. We dive deep into financial stories that Wall Street doesn't want you to understand. Our community is growing because we don't just report news. We decode what's actually happening behind the scenes. Subscribe now so you don't miss the critical details coming up. Here's what we know. Between early 2023 and now, U.S. government procurement records show multiple agencies requesting emergency stockpiles of silver. Defense contractors, energy departments, even agencies that don't typically work with precious metals started placing orders. This isn't speculation. These are documented requests submitted through official government channels. The Defense Logistics Agency, which manages the National Defense Stockpile, has been remarkably active. They've been acquiring silver at quantities that suggest preparation for something bigger than normal operations. Now, you might be thinking, why silver specifically? That's the question that unravels everything. Silver isn't just pretty jewelry or investment vehicles. It's absolutely essential in technology. Solar panels, electronics, medical devices, aerospace components. Modern military equipment relies heavily on silver. Every fighter jet, every advanced weapons system, every communication device contains significant amounts of silver. If there's a supply chain disruption, whether from a trade war, sanctions, or natural disaster, the technological advantage of nations becomes compromised. But there's another layer to this story. About 18 months ago, global silver supply became increasingly uncertain. Mine production in major countries like Mexico, Peru, and China faced disruptions. Export restrictions started appearing. Prices became volatile. And suddenly, the government couldn't ignore the risk anymore. They had to act. What most people do unrealize is that America's silver reserves are actually quite small compared to historical levels. We've been using more silver than we've been storing for decades. The government sold off massive silver reserves in the 1970s and 1980s. By the time anyone realized how strategic silver actually was, the cupboard was nearly bare. This creates a vulnerability, a weakness that hostile nations or even market manipulators could exploit. Imagine a scenario where silver becomes scarce. Imagine the economic cascade that follows. Military production slows. Technology manufacturing stalls. Prices skyrocket. Inflation accelerates. Supply chains crumble. These aren't fantasy scenarios. They're tested economic warfare tactics that adversaries have openly discussed in strategic documents. So the government, finally, is waking up to reality. They're not making major announcements because they want to panic markets or tip off competitors about the urgency. Instead, they're doing what governments have always done during preparation phases. They're quietly accumulating. They're securing supply lines. They're ensuring that when the next crisis hits, America isn't dependent on imports or vulnerable to blockades. The timing is also crucial. We're in a period of increasing geopolitical tension. Supply chains are fragmented. Technology competition is intensifying. Every advanced nation is preparing for a world where interdependence is weaponized. Silver is part of that preparation. It's unglamorous, it's ungloomy, it doesn't make headlines, but it's absolutely essential. Consider also what this means for inflation. Silver prices have historically moved in relation to inflation expectations. When the government stockpiles silver, it's often signaling that they expect sustained inflation or currency devaluation. They're protecting purchasing power. They're hedging against monetary instability. The average citizen doesn't have the resources to do what governments do, but you can follow their leads. When institutions start moving precious metals, it's a signal worth paying attention to. Let's talk about what's public versus what's hidden. Government procurement databases show official purchases, but there's also a secondary market. Private contractors, refineries, supply chain logistics companies. They're all part of this ecosystem. When you track silver flows through these channels, a larger picture emerges. Agencies are acquiring silver faster than they're consuming it. They're storing it. They're preparing. China and Russia have been doing this for years. They've been quietly accumulating precious metals, while Americans have been distracted by stock markets and cryptocurrency. Now the U.S. government is finally catching up. They've realized that in a world where monetary systems are fragile, where currency can be devalued, where supply chains can be weaponized, tangible assets matter. Silver matters. What does this mean for regular people? First, it validates something precious metals investors have been saying for years. Tangible assets provide stability. They maintain value when currencies fluctuate, while your dollars lose purchasing power. Silver maintains its utility and its worth. If the government thinks silver's important enough to stockpile, maybe you should think about it too. Not in a paranoid way, but in a rational, diversification way. Second, it suggests that stability at current levels isn't guaranteed. Governments don't stockpile resources for fun. They do it because they foresee potential disruptions. Economic disruptions, supply disruptions, geopolitical disruptions. By understanding what governments are doing, you get a preview of what they think the future might look like. Third, it's a reminder that information asymmetry exists. The people making decisions have access to data and analysis that ordinary citizens don't see. They're reading the same economic reports, the same supply chain analyses, the same geopolitical assessments, and they're coming to the conclusion that silver security matters. The fact that they're not announcing this loudly makes it even more significant. They're not trying to create a panic. They're not trying to manipulate markets. They're just preparing. The silver story is also connected to the broader precious metals narrative. Gold gets the attention. Platinum gets some discussion. But silver, the industrial metal that's also a store of value, operates in the shadows. It's less glamorous. It has more industrial applications. It's more volatile. But it's also more essential to modern technology and national security. That's why governments care about it. What we're witnessing is a quiet repositioning. Governments worldwide are reassessing what actual wealth and security mean. It's not just about GDP numbers or stock indices. It's about having physical resources. It's about resilience. It's about being prepared for scenarios that most people haven't even considered. And silver, unglamorous as it is, has become part of that strategic calculus. The mainstream media won't tell you this story because it doesn't fit their narrative. It challenges certain economic assumptions. It suggests that the current system has vulnerabilities that need addressing. But once you understand what's happening, you see it everywhere. You see it in supply chain news. You see it in geopolitical tensions. You see it in inflation data. You see it in government budgets when you know how to read them. This is why the silent ledger exists. To decode these stories. To connect the dots that mainstream outlets ignore. To help you understand the actual world we're living in, not the world that sounds reassuring on the evening news. So here's what I want you to do right now. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you think this silver stockpiling means. Are you concerned? Are you skeptical? Do you have your own theory? The more comments and shares this video gets, the more the algorithm recognizes that this content matters. Please share this with someone who needs to understand this story. Friends, family, colleagues. Financial literacy isn't just about stocks and bonds. It's about understanding what institutions are actually doing. And right now, institutions are stockpiling silver. The question is, what are you going to do with that information? Thank you for watching The Silent Ledger. We'll be back soon with more stories that major media refuses to tell. Until then, stay informed, stay prepared, and remember, the most powerful people in the world aren't the ones making noise. They're the ones acting quietly while everyone else is distracted.